Welcome everybody to Relationship Fun and Games.
And Fights Clean, Sex Dirty TV.
We're here in the final episode of Season 5, the Season of Peace, and we're here to talk about how to keep the sex dirty after.
Yeah, so we're going to get to more on that topic, but just encouraging all of you, this is the final episode of the Season of Peace, as Raj said. And hey, Raj, why don't you take that screen off so I can see our face now? Yeah. And this is the Season of Peace. We know that you have gotten through some holidays already. You're in the midst of them, stressful times. How are you going to spend your time? How are you going to spend your money? So we encourage you to, one, be investing in keeping the fights clean. Two, be investing in keeping the sex dirty, because a little passion can go a long way during the holidays to keep things peaceful, right? A little stress release, be great for your relationship. So tonight we're going to talk about that topic, and we'll get more to that in just a moment, but we want to go ahead and introduce you to our special guest tonight. Welcome to Leslie and Toni. Thanks so much for joining us. Raj, can we go to video rather than the shared screen, or is that what we're on right now?
We are on video and they're on video.
Okay, great. Awesome. So we're going to give you their... Sometimes it's hard for me to see. He's pulling all the bells and whistles there behind the scenes. I just want to make sure that everybody can see your faces as well. We are going to give your bios, but in a minute, after we give your, more official bios, we'd love to hear from you. Just, something about either how you met or, motto for your relationship that's gotten you through to be this successful. I know you guys work together as well. That's a whole nother layer on a relationship. So anything that you want to share us that's going to give us a sense of you. But first, we'll go ahead and introduce you through your bios. Just wanted to plant that seed.
Thank you.
Okay, so great to have you here. We met Toni and Leslie just 2 weeks ago now, and we were
amazing event.
So taken by the work that they're doing in this realm of dark and light. Just really excited to have them here tonight. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I actually have an aversion in the past to anything having to do with shadow, and this may not make sense yet till we get to their bios. But when I met Leslie first and was talking with him, it was the first time I was really attracted to actually looking at shadow and my dark side and actually embracing it and using it for the positive. So I got a little bit of the optimist, a little bit of the positivity in there, but I had never seen it talked about in such a great way. So, let me tell you what I'm talking about with the shadow here. So Toni and Leslie, we're going to tell you more about their company in a second, but first about them individually. Toni, she specializes in healing core wounds, and we all have those. None of us got out of our childhood, no matter how great or difficult a childhood you have. We all have our wounds. I mean, just look at how society treats sex and all of the shame around it. And I mean, my gosh, Raj and I in 11 years, we've definitely done our own work on healing some of those core wounds. And then the defense patterns. If you watched the show before, we've talked a lot about defense patterns, and it really is the Achilles heel that gets in the way and kills any connection in your relationship.
Yeah, within probably 10 minutes of meeting Toni, she asked me like 3 questions that seemed completely disparate, and it nailed exactly my core wound. And Toni, we need to follow up still. Have that conversation we never got to finish.
Great. And then also Leslie, her beloved. It's funny that you ended up at the event talking more with Lonnie, and I ended up talking more with Leslie. We got both our bases covered. We adore both of you and your work, and couldn't wait to get you on the show. And Leslie's a certified sex and relationship coach. And, we're going to talk tonight about shame into connection, but there's also this element of shame into power, not power like over someone, or it could be, but really being empowered, like take something that's limiting you and break out of that so that you really get that your desires and your experiences mean something good about you, and there's something that's trying to grow and learn there. He's done over 5 years, although this is an older bio, so it would be over 7 years of study in the realms of sexuality and BDSM now, Leslie?
6 years.
Lucky number 7? 6 years, yeah. And boy, what an education myself, from having been a teacher in high school and college myself, former high school teacher. We know that's one it says a lot about somebody that they can teach in high school and capture people's attention. And we know you don't just know something, but you know how to actually communicate it as well.
That's real work in the shadow.
There you go. Exactly. That's real work in the shadow. Well, we also have one more slide on you guys. This is on the two of you. And go ahead, hit it one more time, Raj. The lightdarkinstitute.com is their website. And I really encourage you to check it out. Together, they're teaching workshops on darkness, shame, power, connection. They were recently featured in the magazine The Atlantic. I love that magazine. I love the title of this. That time I tried BDSM therapy. Reminds me in that movie where they're like, you know, that time at band camp? That one time at band camp?
When I tried BDSM.
When I tried BDSM therapy. It just shows you that they bring this level of lightness to the darkness. That's why it's called the Light Dark Institute. Duh, I just got that one there. One of those duh-ahs. In addition to their workshops, they also do one-on-one work, and they do a signature 3-day immersion called the Light Dark Experience. So welcome to the two of you. Thank you so much for being here. And anything else you want to let us know about your work or your relationship? We're just really excited to have you here tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So good to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really great to be on the show. Thank you both so much for having us.
Mm-hmm.
Really wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, anything about,
yeah, what we'd like to share.
Yeah, about your relationship and how you came to be in partnership that you'd love to share.
Yeah, totally. And because I mean, I think everybody has a pretty unique story in meeting, but ours is especially unique in certain aspects. Yeah, when I first met
unique cute.
When I first met Toni, she had gotten really clear in herself that she was looking for a dom, like someone to take charge of her body and mind and hold her in that space. And she had found a lot of...
In case anybody watching isn't familiar with what that term means, dom comes from BDSM or kink, and it means a dominant person. So it means that I was looking for a relationship where I could play with my partner in the realms of power and surrender. And I knew I had gotten in touch after many years, which is a whole nother story, but after many years of knowing that I had these desires and had desires in particular to be dominated by a man, but I had a lot of shame around that. I had a lot of judgment of it. I thought maybe there was something wrong with me. I had sworn it off for a long time. I had sworn off my entire dark side. Like Gabby, you mentioned aversion to the dark side. I went through that really deeply. I swore it all off. My sex drive died with it. I didn't figure that out until a few years later when I finally started doing more research and realizing that there actually are a lot of really healthy, amazing, conscious ways to use BDSM. And then I started really realizing, you know, this desire that I have to surrender and be held and be cared for, I actually really want to pursue that and find a partner who can dominate me in those conscious, loving ways and explore that. So that was what I was looking for at the time that we met.
Yeah, you know, if I could interject just for 1 second, you know, when I did some research on what the most common fantasies are out there for women and for men, and for women, the #1 word that comes up is ravaged. It's this act of surrender and release, and it really is a perfect area to explore this, because, you know, it brings up all of these elements of trust and surrender and vulnerability. And it's just interesting that words surrender and ravage come up again and again and again, of you are not alone. It might be at different extremes for different people, different degrees, I should say. And but there is a very common human desire to surrender and to be taken.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was
What a
very...
way to start. Okay, so you had her looking for that and you walked into that. Well, all right, continue this story.
So enter me, and when I met Toni, I was like, whoa, who is that? And we had some conversations that were just like, I was delirious with wanting to be connected with her. And there was kind of like this, like, she's clear looking for a dom. And like I'd been exploring a lot of things in sexuality, and BDSM was one of them, but I was kind of like, you know, that was like a whole new level of like a whole relationship where I'm the dom. Like I didn't even know if that was possible or what. I just knew like I wanted to be connected with her, you know. I was just kind of like coming in, whatever it takes, you know. And one night we were at a workshop, and I had this like lust. I saw Tani kind of like wandering out into the dance floor, and this like intense lust came up over me that I never felt before. Like, addiction, obsession, like dark, and it was like almost like uncontrollable. Like I didn't know what was coming up, and I finally, like, you know, she kind of separated from the dance floor, and I walked up and just took her hand, and like, in what her original desire was, is to be led. And we left the dance floor and started a night of where essentially something entirely new came out of me that I never knew existed. And it was literally like a birthing of my power that came out. And that night,
so great, like it's like you guys met each other on the same night, because she's meeting the new you, but she drew out this new you that you had never met. So you both met you that night.
Yeah. And for both of us, but especially for me, that night was like the biggest moment of personal growth that I had ever experienced, because I suddenly looked at all the stuff I'd been working on, all my defense patterns and wounds that I was working through. This one in me just looked out over all of that and was like, that's hilarious. Like, how could I be afraid of that? Like, what? Like, I could feel my power just like emanating, and so could everyone else around me, just like woo, woo. And so we started this exploration together. It was instantaneous. We were like bonded, and in a whole new way that, like, in a certain way, like everything I talked about, it sounded really unhealthy, but we were so in approval of it, so full on with it, that everyone who heard about it just got electrified. They were just like, what? Like, what? And so we just started to explore, like, because darkness was permissioned in the relationship, we just started to explore it, and we just kept finding it everywhere we went in it. It actually like popped out into the most amazing, brilliant places of love and connection and trust, because it takes a huge amount of trust to go into these places together. And that's like where we started experiencing a level of intimacy and power and connection that was just like unheard of. And we started bringing it to the people we knew, our friends who would be having issues in their relationship or whatever. And we would just like, we just had these beings inside of us that were just like, oh yeah. And we draw it out and have them play it out. And there would be these massive healing sessions just like kind of happen in the moment. And I realized, like, I started doing Dom training instead of coaching, because I just found it to be a more effective, like I could just aim myself instead of being like, okay, that's your fear. Like, how do you get through your fear to the next step or something like that? In coaching, it was more like, what's your fear? What's your anger? What's your grief? What's your rage? Like, let's go there. Let's go there. Like, that's where all the good stuff is. And when you come at those dark things with that kind of approval, it's incredible what happens. It's like there's this hidden part of ourselves that just goes, oh my God, you mean I can show up? I can be in the world? I can exist? And that's what our relationship for both of us birthed, is just like a whole new ability to be in the world. So we started the Lake Rock Institute because we wanted people to have those.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard both of you speak about is just the transformative nature of being sexually expressed, and how much of our power and sex drive is diminished when we're suppressed in that realm, you know? And also this conversation around trust and how that deepens intimacy in sex, in addition to just other areas of your life. This past weekend, Gabby and I had this really amazing experience where we both shared a secret that we had never told anybody. And that was followed by having some of the best sex that we've had, like, for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it was really great.
And, so I love what you're
And not just the best sex, it really, I felt a palpable difference. Like, I physically felt different. You know, it wasn't a huge secret, and we, you know, it was our only ones, but we tell each other pretty much everything. We talk about everything. So it was like this thing, you know, come up in our minds, like, oh, I can't think about that. I had made up a story that Raj knew my secret, but he was so embarrassed for me about my secret that he wouldn't bring it up to talk to me about it. You know, I had all of this story and shame about it. And once that shame was gone, it was like, oh, he doesn't just love me, he really sees me and he still loves me. It's this human need for us to be truly seen. You know, we all feel like a little bit of a fraud, to be truly seen and truly known. So thank you for the work you're doing in that area. I've never been more inspired. I want to know more about your work as well. Raj and I'll be diving in.
Awesome. All right, well, welcome to the show tonight. We can't wait to hear the tips that you have for us and our audience later in the show. And right now we're going to tell a little bit about our show format and how we organize our content. So when Gabby and I got married, on our wedding day, someone, you know how people give you advice of how to stay together. And this one couple said, well, just keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. That's all you need to know.
Fights clean, sex dirty.
So who knew that 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, we were actually going to be using that as our coaching format.
Well, when we started doing relationship work, sorry, did I catch you there? When we started doing relationship work, we started to survey people and ask them, what's going on? What are your biggest challenges? And they pretty much fall into those two categories. They're like, I don't want to lose it and do or say something I'm going to regret. You know, the bickering all of the time, the negativity. I don't, you know, how can we not be fighting all the time? And then how do we keep the passion alive? How do we keep it spicy and interesting and awesome? So that's why in every season we do 8 episodes, because it's not just fights clean, sex dirty, but it's important when you apply those tips, because like what you're going to do in the middle of an argument or in the middle of getting it on is very different than what you're going to do well beforehand or even after. So tonight, if you want to go to the next slide, Raj, tonight we're going to be talking about how to keep the sex dirty after. It's the final episode of the season, episode 5.8. So thanks for joining us to finish off the season, whether you're live or watching the replay.
Yeah, and about the top of the hour here, we're going to make that join the Hangout button live. And if you click on that, you can jump into the Hangout with us and ask Toni and Leslie or Gabby and I questions. And if you do jump on, we'll send you our cheat sheet for free. And this contains our top 8 tips on how to keep the fights.
No, there's 16 tips.
There's 16? Well,
yes.
8 for fights clean.
No, there's
oh, there's 2.
There's 16. They have 16 tips. Bonus, double your pleasure. Yes, and they're all summarized into one sentence. You can go and find the blogs to see the whole gist of them, but these are meant to be like a cheat sheet. You know, you got in your wallet, you know, you're having an argument, pull it out. What is it that thing I'm supposed to do? Right? Got that little trigger and reminder, and
so
get you back on track.
We'll let you know when that button goes live. You may need to refresh your screen, your browser to get it to register, but feel free to join us when that happens. Okay, so
awesome. So if you're here tonight because of this particular topic, or you're watching the replay, if you know you really are looking at the afterwards, maybe in your relationship, you know, one of you jumps up really quickly, or you know, you stretch like a rubber band and you express, and you know, it gets out there a while, and then you contract, you know, afterwards, and you're embarrassed and it's hard to talk about, or maybe something didn't happen so well, but you feel like you're walking on eggshells and you can't tell your beloved. So if this particular area of what to do after the deed is done, so to speak, is what's interest to you right now, that you can check out some of our past episodes or some of our past blog topics. So you can just go to our website, Relationship Fun and Games, course.com, and look for the logo for Sex Dirty After, the one with the devil horns here. Know when to wear the halos, when to wear the horns, and for the after to be colored in. So you can find all the best tips that apply to the area where you need it the most, when you need it the most. Awesome.
Okay, so
tonight we got a tip for you.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the rope recap. And here's a URL to get a quick download on this tip. We call this our quick tip video clip. Did I get that right? Quick tip video clip.
You did get that right.
Quick tip video clip. And this is a 3 to 5 minute video on this particular tip, and you can get that by going to this URL down below, and our moderator will post that in the comments window.
Yeah, and part of putting that link in the comments is so that you can go ahead and bookmark it on your phone or your computer or wherever. It's great to have it on your phone. So if this is a tip that resonates for you, then when you're thinking about it, when it comes up, you're like, what was that thing? You can just click it on your phone, open up, you know, save this URL as an icon on the screen page on your phone, on your smartphones. Lord knows Raj and I have done that. Yeah, we like keep our tips on our phone, the ones that we're using. Like, get my phone. What was that tip? What am I supposed to do
usually
when I want to rip your head off?
Of making love.
Well, I was also thinking fights too, but yes.
Fights.
I don't know. Yeah, no, you don't want to have your phones out when you're having sex. Probably apps for that. So we're going to tell you about this practice, the romp recap. You know, you will have that video, but we're going to tell you about it right now as well. Now, if you look at the top level, just the spirit of what the romp recap is all about is we want you to have the best sex you've ever had. We call it best ever sexy time, BEST, right? And Raj and I made a promise after our 7th year of marriage that we were going to not have the inherited 7-year itch, but we were going to have an itch to have the best sex we've ever had. And this is what we came up with. How do we even better if it every time? So we hold that all is well. You're awesome. I'm awesome. There's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about. All is well. And if we were to make it even better, how would we make it even better? So it takes the shame and the blame out of it, and all of the invites all of the innovation and creativity and connection and sharing. So if you bring the spirit of those two along with this tool, the romp recap, you're pretty much guaranteed to have best ever sexy time.
Yeah, one of the things that this tool embraces is the, often as human beings, when something isn't going the way we want to, we tend to complain or suffer about it, either internally or externally. And we spend a whole lot of energy there.
There's some shadow,
and not
some whining
much,
shadow.
Yeah, not much energy actually moving it towards how we want it to be. So this, like, hey, we are where we are now, and like, that's great, that's where we are. And what's not working? How can we make it better next time? And if you keep doing that, your frustrations lead you to even better, and in the moment you're satisfied because you're accepting all is well now. So it's a super powerful
to hold the space of all is well, rather than like, that didn't go the way I wanted.
Totally. It's like, that went okay, and here's how we're gonna up level for the next time.
Even better next time. All right, so what is this criteria of the romp recap? A romp, right? You have a little romp in the hay. A recap, let's look back. This is kind of like a post-game analysis, so to speak. And Raj and I like to do this not the first hour after you've had sex, because we call that the post-orgasmic chill. And you want to just, whether that's eye contact or breathing each other in, but it's not really the time to kind of critique your sex life. Maybe there's exceptions in that time if you're really feeling it, or if something was so super awesome and you want to talk about it right then and there, tell them all the juicy details. But in general, an hour afterwards, within 24 afterwards.
I know with our last session of sex, I was like, okay, I want to talk about this and this and this.
We couldn't help it. It was about 15 minutes later, we were in the shower, and it was so much fun. We had so much to talk about, we couldn't help ourselves. So it's a guideline, not a rule, 1 hour to 24 hours. And in the 3 areas we talk about, now we don't score each other. This isn't about blame or scoring how good someone is. It's scoring the experience together. So we both talk about the numbers, and I'll say, intimacy, how connected did we feel? I give it an 8. I really felt connected to you, but you know how much I love eye contact, especially at the moment of penetration.
And then she'll check in, like, how about you? How did you feel the intimacy was between us? Right? And
yep.
I can agree, or I can say, hey, I thought it actually was like a 9. I felt so connected with you, and I totally got it around the eye contact. The next time, that's something that I'll do.
And so then you can do the same thing for sexiness and technique, like how hot was it? And, sometimes this isn't a judgment, sometimes something is not as intimate, but super, super sexy, and maybe you've closed your eyes and you've gone into your own world, but you're just so immersed in it. It was a totally sexy experience. And then technique, it might be, when you did that position, I really loved it. I think last time what I had said was, what did we do? 5 minutes of anything? From Sierra and Rano last episode, we learned about 5 minutes of anything. So Raj said, okay, let's do 5 minutes of fucking. And we said, okay, we're going to change. We're going to do 5 positions in 5 minutes. We're just playing a game. So it might be like, hey, I loved how we brought some playfulness to that, and that technique was really great. I loved how we were experimenting with positions. I'd love to do more of that.
Great tip from Susan Bratton a couple of episodes ago about avocado oil as a lubricant, and that its viscosity is different than the viscosity of coconut oil, for example. And so we were talking about that in the technique overview later in the day. And it was these kinds of things that allows you to talk about what worked and what could be even better if.
Yeah, we can't miss slipping in the avocado oil and coconut oil. We learned from them that coconut oil is for what they call zone 2, the thighs and the body and whatnot. Avocado oil is for any of the genital areas, the more sensitive areas, and both the texture and viscosity. And we have a friend who has always said, if you can't eat it, you shouldn't put it on your body. So with whatever explorations or sexplorations you're doing with trust, often some lubrication can be helpful. So much out there on the market is sticky and all of this, and maybe you guys have your own favorites here, but we highly, highly, highly recommend the avocado and the coconut oil.
So that's an overview of the romp recap in each of those 3 categories, and you can come up with your own, as Gabby mentioned. But in each of those categories, what you want to do is come up with what would make it even better if it's not a 10, or even if it is a 10, how can we reset our 10 so that our current 10 is like an 8?
Even better. Yeah. All right. So let's wrap it up here because we have some really juicy tips that we want to get to from Leslie and Tani. I almost called you Lonnie. He's combining your names there. This is your action option, because all this information is really awesome, but if you don't put it into action, then it's not going to make much difference. But it's just an option, and you have to have autonomy in this, right? We're not pushing anything on you, but we're encouraging you. Ready, Raj? Okay,
so we do a Mission Possible theme.
All right, so get your Mission Possible hats on. Your action option, should you choose to accept it, is to within 24 hours after the next time you and your beloved have some sexy time, review the highlights with your partner and have some fun doing it. Doesn't have to be so serious and significant. You don't have to walk on eggshells. So you can do this by writing down, or just a conversation, you know, what was blissful, what was great, what would make it even better. You might even be playful. Was there an MVP? Like, oh my gosh, that move, that just made the whole sexual experience.
We haven't used
MVP in a while. That's a good reminder, right? Well, let's whip out the MVP. And what move made it the MVP move, right? Oh man, that's your signature move. That one was done so well. So you want to start to set your sights on those even better if ideas and declare what you will do differently the next time around. So that's the action option for the romp recap. Thanks so much for checking out this tip. And again, you can save the link so that you've got the short video clip of that. Now, Leslie and Tani, how about for you? Have you seen this show up in your case? Because, you know, for so many couples, you probably have heard it before, that it's difficult to talk about sex. I mean, I remember I was at one talk, a panel, and this one woman, Jaya, I don't know if you probably know her in the business, but she was speaking and she said, you know, I was working with this one couple and coaching them separately, and I was speaking to the woman, and she said, down to she wanted to do more anal exploration, and she's talking to the husband and comes down to, it turns out he wants more anal exploration, and she's laughing like, if the two of you would just talk to each other, stop being so embarrassed and walking on eggshells, you'd have an awesome sex life. You just have to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So how has this shown up for you, both yourselves and with the clients you work with?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because in terms of like actual like sex, we don't focus so much on it with our clients. But one of the things that you brought up is but communication is so important. And one of the awesome things about shadow, like what we teach, is like, if something's embarrassing, like that's awesome. Like that's so, that's like that's just like got so much juice. Like if you're embarrassed by that, like savor it, get ready to share that in the right moment, because that's the thing that's going to actually like create a lot of sensation, a lot of intimacy between the two of you, even if it's not.
Oh, I love that. Embarrassment creates intimacy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And same goes with deeper shame, with anything that you really like judge about yourself, or those desires where it's like, oh my God, if anybody knew that about me, like, no, they would reject me, they would push me away. We think that stuff is great too. And as far as we're concerned, everybody has that stuff. Everybody has those really dark, intense desires that we tend to not even want to look at in ourselves. We also tend to judge them when we see them out there in the world around us, but they're naturally part of us. And so what we really love to do in our own relationship and in our work with clients is help people create containers through really good communication to actually be able to explore some of those edges and those dark desires. And it's like, yeah, the more repressed it is, the more embarrassed you are, the more shame you have around it. That's awesome, because that's just power. It's just power building in the pressure cooker. And when you actually take the lid off, like you guys experienced with sharing your secrets with each other, there's so much power and connection and intimacy available when we actually meet each other in those dark places that we are terrified of being seen.
Right. And a lot of it is the thing that we like to move the focus off is the content of what it is. Like, it's like, I want to have anal sex, like that causes the embarrassment, but like actually getting that desire met or not, the bigger thing is that it gets expressed and shared in a vulnerable, you know, container of trust with your partner. And then, like, whatever
Raj sharing what the secret was, when Raj was sharing me the secret, it was just something that, not that he wanted to do anything, it's just something that had been popping into his mind, and it just felt wrong that he was keeping it as a secret from me, of this desire that he had. And it wasn't even, you know, it was more what we distinguish, our friend John Benson taught us this, to distinguish between fantasies, desires, and needs. You know, a fantasy is something you want to talk about and it's hot, but you don't necessarily want to do it. A desire is you actually kind of do want to do it, but it's not like you have to do it. And a need is, no, actually, I kind of need this, you know, and to distinguish those. But the fantasy, really when you hold it that, it's really powerful. Yeah. So speaking of taking the lid off, let's take the lid off and shift over to your topics here. Raj, if you go ahead and share those screen here. And I love this. You say, to be fully integrated and fully intimate, you have to be open to all of it, especially shame. It's my favorite sentence of when we were speaking the other day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to, before we talk about the different points that we want to talk about in this, is we help people have big experiences, like oftentimes the biggest, like, you know, kind of peak moments in their life. And whenever we have any kind of big experience, it's so important to learn how to come down from it really well. And one of the things that we teach people is a concept in BDSM, which is aftercare. And a lot of times, you know, a lot of couples have something that they oftentimes do, whether they've ever talked about it or not, after sex. Sometimes it's cuddling, sometimes it's eye gazing, or sometimes it's separate, go take a shower, kind of forget how it happened. Or sometimes it's get in a fight. But like whatever it is, we like to teach aftercare because it's like this is actually a really big moment after you're coming down from, if there was climax or just like a shared connected experience. And we oftentimes don't honor that. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, like, and I've been here before, but actually every time it happens, you've never been there before, because it's always a little bit different. And so in honoring that, we find it really helpful to, in this concept of aftercare, to actually work out before sex, what are the kinds of things that you want to do together that are going to help you feel connected, and use this time where all this intimacy is opened up to actually get even more connected.
And he means by that workout, obviously you want to talk about your desires for sex itself, but he's referring specifically to aftercare. Yeah. Like, actually talk about that ahead of time and say, you know, if I'm going to have a really big experience, and especially if you are exploring darkness and sexuality, you know, I love the keep the sex dirty topic in this show, especially if you are getting into more shadowy areas where you're coming out in ways with each other that you have shame or fear around expressing, then it's so important, because there's so much vulnerability opening up. And you guys have probably heard of the concept of a vulnerability hangover. Like, we can actually feel like we open up and it's like this moment of, oh my gosh, I'm so connected, and oh God, I just did that, oh no. And then we can shut down, or we can find ways to disconnect from our partner. And so talking about aftercare ahead of time is a really great way to set yourselves up to have a container afterwards where you can really come down together and give each other what's needed. So you can say, you know, if I'm going to have a big experience where I'm going to go completely, you know, you're going to take me completely out of control and be guiding this experience, and afterwards I'm going to be like a wet noodle, I need to be held and cared for in certain ways while I'm kind of coming back to the reality that I was in before we started. Or vice versa, and everybody has different needs for that. So really important to talk about it ahead of time and just get clear on what your needs and desires are for that kind of care.
Yeah, I when I knew that you guys were going to be on the show tonight, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was that level of vulnerability that happens after these peak experiences, because when you open up, the natural tendency is to contract after, which then can lead to further contraction and have the peak experience lead to minimal experiences in the future. And you know, I've had experiences where I just feel badly about myself, and this weird, you know, like this younger feeling of shame or guilt or like that. And so I'm assuming, like, what can you say specifically about, like, I get the concept of aftercare and planning that ahead of time, but is there anything to say about specifically what to do to handle those kinds of emotions that come up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. Thank you. Well, it's I'm going to jump ahead a little on our tip list, and the one that we have.
Jump around anywhere. That's why I'm going to hold keep popping the screen up so you can jump around wherever you want.
Awesome. Yeah. The concept of coming down well is something that we put a lot of attention on. Like Leslie said, we lead people into these really massive peak experiences, and we, as humans, we have a tendency, like if we go way up, out of our normal range, even though up is awesome, we tend to find ways to bring ourselves back down, possibly even to below the level that we were at before we started. They're going to get ourselves back in that range of normal. And it's an unconscious thing, but we find ways, right? We pick a fight, or we get in a car accident, or we, you know, just take ourselves down emotionally, like you were talking about, Raj. And so coming down well, and particularly doing the down well, is sort of this concept of recognizing that ups and downs are natural. And when you go into the down, because it is natural that there will be a down sometimes following ups in your life, following peak experiences, whether that's in sex or something else. But after those big up moments, there tends to be a down, and it's really important to learn to handle that down skillfully. And that can look a lot of different ways, but basically self-care is a hugely important part of it. Like, be with what you need. It's not necessarily a great time to try to get a bunch of work done or be super productive. It's a good time to, like, take a bath or snuggle more with your partner and really be gentle with yourself.
Right. As you were speaking, I recalled that one of the things that I've learned, and Leslie, I'd love to hear if you have anything to add to that, but to be with the emotions that come up rather than react to them. And, you know, it's just that experience of we're designed to react to our mental sort of stuff that happens to us after vulnerability or whatever, right, to stay safe. But if you don't react, but rather just be present too. And I found that really helps me just kind of ride that storm rather than engaging in that. And
he invokes the Braveheart, you know, in the movie when, you know, they're all about to go into battle, and he's saying, hold, you know, just hold that energy. It's like, I know it's a lot and it's really intense, but hold.
Yeah, and that's just going to our other tip too about turning shame into connection and what that means, because that's what one of the things that happens, especially in like after climax, and this is especially true, I think, for women, because there's extra shame in our culture put on women's pleasure. Like after, like, it's like you can be in an experience, you're fully embodied, you're fully there, and then the climax happens, and then there's all this opportunity for this subtle shame to sneak in about, like, feeling too good, feeling too much, being too much, like, and it can happen for men and women, but I know that oftentimes is like a sneaking thing that finds its way in there. And I would suggest to everyone who's watching this to, next time you're having sex, like, watch that moment right after climax. Just really pay attention to what's happening there. Because so often these things come in that we don't notice because they've always been there and we're just used to them. But they're actually, there's
so you're noticing and that you're feeling that shame, you're being aware, and that has come up.
Right.
What would you recommend in that moment? You say something about it. You know, how do you dance with it?
Yeah, and this is where you get an opportunity to turn shame, which is like, shame is like, you don't belong, you can't be, you don't get to be here if you're that person, or you're that kind of person, or you have that kind of thought or whatever, right? Like, that's what shame says. So when you're sharing this moment, this come down with your partner, there's this opportunity you first have to be with it, as Raj is saying, because you have to pay attention, you have to know it's there. And then the second part is, like, how vulnerably can you share the shame? You know, how And there's two parts to that we really like to focus on. The first is making sure that you create like you communicate well with your partner before you share, because a lot of times like we'll share something really vulnerable, but we'll do it kind of a little bit protected, or we won't like kind of like front load that we're about to share something that's really vulnerable to us, and then our partner will be like, oh yeah, really? Like not, you know, like,
so silly.
right? So it's like saying like, hey, I have something really vulnerable I want to share with you, and I'm not even sure what it is, but I noticed. And then taking the opportunity to share whatever it is, as you guys, and you guys basically started out with your discovery when you shared a secret with each other, and like it opened up all kinds of intimacy. That's exactly like it's this weird thing, because it's like really vulnerable, scary, or little ones inside going, oh, please don't reject me if I say this or whatever. And then you say it, right? And then it's like, oh, that was the best thing ever. But we always,
I know.
Yeah, that's the best thing ever, because every time it's like, you know, and it's almost like when shame gets turned into a connection, when you express something vulnerably and your partner receives it, it's like another climax between you. It's another moment of just like, woof, a deep connection. And that's why, I think the thing to point out is like, the thing that we like to just highlight and want to highlight for everyone is shame is good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a big sign saying, hey, you're under this rock.
Yeah, and shame.
Say that again. The sound got a little.
Yeah, say more about shame is good.
You said something about
shame, like like when we experience shame, we tend to think that's bad. Like, I don't want to feel that or whatever. But that feeling, however it comes up, of like, ew, like, not that. I don't have that desire. I don't have that feeling. I don't feel insecure. Like, is the opportunity. It, like, really, if we were really paying attention, it would be this big sign saying like, hey, I'm right here. Like, I've been hiding under this rock, and here's your chance to look. Like, here's your chance to turn this rock over and discover more about who you are, and share that with your partner and create more intimacy.
It's kind of like finding gold instead of. We're getting a little bit of echo. Or maybe a tad on your end.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So I love what you're saying.
Yeah. Something changed, Sarah, on the sound there.
Sarah, could you chat us? Let us know if you're picking up echo as well.
I'll turn it down on our end.
And okay.
Yes, to do it.
Yeah. Could you mute while we're talking on your side?
Leslie and Toni.
Sure.
And we'll just have to manage it that way.
Great.
Okay, so I really love this this framing around shame. That like shame is gold. It's not like this thing to avoid. It's like, there it is. And then to leverage it as like this gold mine of personal growth and development and expansive experience. And it really landed for me when you sort of modeled the little kid that's there saying, please don't reject me. Because when I thought of both of the things that Gabby and I shared, there was both that little kid element of like something from my past around, having an attraction to another woman, and that's bad, like that, like somehow I made up that was bad, but like we all have attraction to other people. It's like weird if you don't, but we have no capacity to most of it. For some of us, like no problem expressing it, but for others, we have that childhood wound where like that's a bad thing, and you never say that.
Well, I mean, even in the culture, most couples would be upset if someone even looks at someone the wrong way. That's the norm, unfortunately.
Yeah, and for Gabby to be so great about me just expressing it, let that little kid wound heal, which let me step more into my masculinity and my sexual self-expression. So it's just amazing.
Well, because there was this element of like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's that doesn't mean anything bad about you at all. And I fully accept you and embrace you exactly the way you are and exactly the way you aren't. And when you do that, about 400 people once, and you got to introduce, a few people got to introduce their guests, and you got only 3 words. And this woman stood up to introduce her husband, and she said something like, he accepts me 100%, or accepts me completely. And the whole room went, they like all swooned. The entire room is like, oh, you really get to be yourself and they're not trying to change you or make you that you're a bad person. You know, you can release, everybody's holding some form of shame or not good enough or I don't feel accepted or I don't belong. And to give people that gift, regardless of what it is that has them not feel belong, whether it's attraction to someone else or desire of something they want to do that they think is naughty or whatever, that, you know, shameful, and to really call that into the light.
Mm-hmm. We'll turn it back over to you, Wilmy.
Awesome. Yeah, I really want to take this opportunity here to share, and this actually leads into this tip around surrender and control as a healing modality. And I just want to talk about that, because once you get to a place where you're actually sharing vulnerably those little kid places underneath the shame, like you've opened up that level of intimacy and trust, there's this amazing potential for you not to just share it, like say the words, but you can actually start using that in your relationship and your sex. Like the one inside who's like really needy, who just feels so needy, and you're so scared that anybody knows that would find out that you're that needy. And if you're able to be that vulnerable with your partner where you can share it, you can even start to play it out in sex, where you could like set a container. And this is what we teach about, like negotiate beforehand, which is like, what do you want to do? What do you want to play with tonight? Like, what's coming up for you? And you could be, well, I am feeling really needy and it keeps coming up and I'd really like to just really give it all, and for you to just receive it. And then, so that this is where like surrender and control, it's like the person receiving is like the dominant, the controller is like, okay, like give it to me. And the person giving can just be like, oh, I just need you all the time. And you just like say all those terrible, terrible, terrible thoughts that you just think would, you know, and really play it out. Like you can embody it. And the reason that we talk about this as a healing modality is because the difference between just sharing a secret or sharing something you're shameful of and playing it out is that if you say it, it's really easy for the mind to like be like, yeah, but it's not really, yeah, she accepts it, but no one else does. Or she accepts that version of the story, but probably not this version. Like there's just so many ways the mind can, it's like, it can almost become like, you're playing that like hit the groundhog on the head, you know, like it's like, boom, you share something really like amazing. Whack-a-mole, that's what it is. That's the thing I'm trying to think of. So, and then, but when you embody it,
down a little bit, and maybe the echo won't happen.
Okay. Maybe maybe I should talk a little quieter.
No,
it's good. Okay. But when you like fully embody that one in you, or the one in you that wants to control, or the one in you that wants to punish, or the one in you that wants to just cry, and the one in you that wants to just hide under a blanket and run away, when you fully get to embody it and play it out with someone else, with your partner, there's an incredible amount of healing that can happen in there. That because you experience it in your body instead of your head, you actually leave from the experience being like, wow, no, like really, this part of me is really acceptable. I was there. I felt those feelings. I shared the whole thing, and I was still loved and received. So that's one of the things that we really focus on in our work, is like how to do that well. And it leads to all kinds of amazing things, because it's not just about sharing, it's also about play, incredible play that can happen.
And I love that you wrote down here to negotiate beforehand. Thanks. Yeah, so negotiating beforehand. And it reminded me of this tip that Brian Franklin and Jennifer Russell, you know, we love games around here. And one of them they suggested was that when you're negotiating beforehand, that one person would introduce 2 adjectives. So, you know, it could be like sultry, explosive, or, you know, whatever it may be. They could be 2, you know, opposites, but you're kind of introducing, you know, it's almost, you know, a form of an archetype by creating these adjectives. Or you can pick an archetype to embody. Or there was another one that they used, which was pick a chakra. you're negotiating the chakra. So, you know, it might be like Raj knows I love sound and vocal. So I might say, I'm feeling really throat tonight, and I, you know, let her roar, let her rip, you know. So there's this communication, because we were talking tonight, perfect bookends. We're talking tonight about the romp recap. This is the negotiating beforehand. And I love that. We have a great off ramp. Now we got the on ramp here, right?
I want to let any listeners live with us now is that Google Hangout button is live, so you might need to refresh your button if you want to join in the conversation here on the Hangout. Just click on that button. Okay.
Yeah, and if for whatever reason you don't necessarily want to go live on video, feel free to put a question in the comments as well. And if you're watching on replay, we answer all of our emails, so feel free to reach out or put other comments at the bottom of this page. We're happy to answer any questions you have, even if it's not live.
Okay, so we have you muted, but we're gonna have our moderator unmute you. And let's see if we want to get through as many of your tips as you can. Thanks for this awesome back and forth conversation. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I think we've covered all of them so far, except this head spin leads to disconnect. And the head spin is such a visceral word there, you know, of like, so what's the head spin that you're talking about? Is this the stories that we get stuck in, all of those emotions we're talking about? Is that what you mean?
You want
Head spin leads to this.
Yeah, sorry.
There's one more too. I want to mention turn up the volume.
Oh,
actually,
yes, please.
Before we get to head spin leads to disconnect, I want to talk about turn up the volume because it's related to the surrender and control. I mean, it's similar to what we were just talking about, but it's like, you know, anywhere where you hit tension in your relationship, and certainly when those feelings come up after sex, it's like it doesn't have to necessarily be in sex, but you could set up times in your day-to-day life where we're going to set up a container for an hour where it has nothing to do with sex, where we're going to turn up the volume on these parts of ourselves and really like exaggerate these characters that want to come through us. And I wanted to mention, Gabby, the connection to, you were mentioning how women's like top fantasy is to be ravished or taken. Like that's another really good one in there. If you're having that desire, like see how you can play with turning up the volume on that. Like make it even bigger. Or the spots that you're ashamed of, you know, if you have some little fantasy or some little thing, like how can you actually play that out even bigger than the thing that you're ashamed of? Because that's that's one of those really great ways to turn shame into power and connection is if there's like a little bit of, I don't know about this, then make it bigger, like go over the top with it, like turn it into play. We're really big proponents of play. So
I feel that and love that with you. I totally feel your play there. It's so fantastic. It's just that sense of play is just really palpable in the work that you guys are doing. I love that. Yeah, and I love that turn shame into power, right? It's totally flipping our connection to shame, because usually shame is totally disempowering. That's awesome.
There we go. Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
It looks like they're muted. So
oh, okay. Yeah. So the head spin of disconnection, this is where something comes up that you don't know how to get through. Like you can't think clearly. There's a lot of sensation and you're not feeling like everything that, like basically, you know, you're in a head spin when you're either accusing in your head, accusing your partner of all kinds of things, or yourself. Like if you're being really hard on yourself or your partner in your mind, you're in a loop. You're in a program, because and there's other things, like if you get really anxious and worried, or if you get what's the third one? Just really disassociated, where you're just like, whoa, what's like like not present. And it's really important to be able to track these things, because what's just happened when you get into a head spin is in some way your core wounds got activated, like shame has come up, and you've disconnected. Like you either disconnected from your body, or you've just like really started focusing on some part of you. It's really almost always disconnection with your body, because you're focusing on some thought pattern in your mind. And this is where it gets really hard to be playful, and to be in vulnerable connection with another person, because even when you try to be vulnerable, it can sometimes, it comes out like you're like, I want to share this really vulnerable thing. I think you're an asshole. You know, basically is what pours out of your mouth, even though it doesn't sound like you're doing that in your head. And so it's really important to start being able to track these things in order to do, you know, what after sex and staying connected well, because there's so many opportunities for shame to enter in, especially later if you're following your tips on, if anyone's following your tips on like sharing what made it great, what was awesome, what was, you know, why would you rate this? There's opportunities in there to be like, wait, but you thought that was bad, but I thought that was good. You know, you can get into headspins there, and the same thing that you're using to be in connection can suddenly become a source of disconnection. And so we just really want to put a plug to anyone if you want to do after intimacy and sex well, and this applies probably to every single stage, you really need to like start paying attention to when you're getting disconnected from your body. And when that happens, you're not able to share vulnerably with your partner, we recommend that you get support from someone else, that you get resourced from somewhere else. And so, and the reason we would just want to talk about that is because a lot of times we can be like banging on a door, like, oh, if I could just get through this thing with our partner, if she would just blah, 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 then
he would just blah, 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 blah.
then we could have intimacy, you know. And it's like those kinds of patterns that come up, it doesn't actually, like, that's the thing that we need to go back and get resourced and then come back together when we're able to actually be vulnerable with what's really going on.
It's a great transition into the next slide, or maybe on your end.
Awesome.
Leslie. They're on mute. Okay, because we're going to tell them how
to find out more. Yeah, you said you wanted to plug the general practice, but we want to plug you here. So obviously Leslie and Toni have so much to share. I'm totally intrigued. Can't wait to find out more. They actually had an evening session last week, but it happens to be the same night we're in another course. You're like, oh, but they're in Santa Cruz, and I don't know if you guys do anything online, but you can check out their website here. And as they have other upcoming programs, if you're on our list, we'll go ahead and send you out some information on that. But go ahead and just take a look and see. I mean, in fact, you can see at the bottom of this image, it says it's for you if. So go find out if that is for you. And you can find that at thelightdarkinstitute.com. Now, if it's your first time to Relationship Fun and Games and to the Fights Clean Sex Dirty show, Raj, you want to go to the next slide for me?
Yeah, just 1 second. Is there any, I guess in the later slides we have the URLs for them to go to?
We do.
Right?
We do.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
One as well. So if you're new to Relationship Fun and Games, we have a free gift for you. It's our Relationship Reset Kit, and that's some of our best tips. We have a 4-part email sequence and a guidebook with at least a couple dozen of our top tips. And you may want to go the full limo ride, as we say, and snap up our ebook, which has dozens and dozens of tips. So we'll put both of those URLs in the comments there. Whether you want our free offering there or our ebook, there's great places to get started just to find out about Relationship Fun and Games.
Okay, and we just launched our online store, and we're so excited about this because this supplements all the words, right? It's actually tools to actually bring into your sex life and your keeping the fights clean. So we have tools that you can use for both keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty on our online store. Yeah,
we call them, we say points for props. You get points for props.
So there's a lot of great, like if you're looking for some cool Christmas stocking stuffers, easy for you to say. Go to the store and you're gonna find some great stuff there. You know, we have things like, you know, this coin that you flip and it says sex
on one side, yeah, TV on the other, or there's a coin that says nice on one side, not on the other. Or my favorite, because we travel a lot together, you guys might like this one, there's a heart-shaped headphone splitter. So if you're watching a movie or listening to something on the airplane or something together or wherever you are, you can split it. But lots of fun things there also for keeping the fights clean. So you can check that out. Now, upcoming, there are a lot of things. We know we're going into the holidays, so we just want to plant the seed of what's coming up early in 2017. We'll have our 3-week communication course, a little mini course, I think that's going to be Mondays, 3 Mondays in a row starting January 12th. Actually, that's a Thursday. And then January 23rd, we'll be launching our Fights Clean Sex Dirty Toolkit, where you can bring all of these props and toys that we were talking about, these products, and put them together in a kit. And then February 23rd, we will launch our Shared Relationship Vision course, which up until now has only been available in our coaching program. So you'll get content that you normally have to pay thousands of dollars for only a couple $100s. And then finally, we will have our luxury retreat in our home in Santa Barbara, March 10th to 12th. So save the date for those. We haven't opened them yet, but they are coming up. Just remember that your relationship happiness is absolutely determined by your relationship habits. So whether it's, what do we call it, negotiating beforehand with sex, or any of these other tips we talked about tonight, don't just pick one, experiment and find the ones that resonate for you. But when you find one that works, make it a practice, make it a habit, make it regular. And speaking of making regulars a new practice, we'll want to wrap up here by showing you one more time how to find out more information about the Like Dark Institute. Embrace all parts of you, embrace all parts of your beloved, and find new levels of connection and power and intimacy, probably more than you ever even thought was possible. I know that's happening for us. Leslie and Tani, any last wrap up or
Yeah, again, thank you so much for having us. Thank you to everybody who's been watching this. And we as well have a bunch of upcoming offerings. We have a lot of workshops coming up in the Bay Area, and those actually are going to be listed on our website soon. They're not at this current moment, but they're coming very soon. And if anybody's curious about really going much deeper with exploring their shadow, and this has tipped your interest, we really specialize in creating really safe, loving, well-held containers with a lot of approval to help people go into those darker parts of themselves that can be so scary to touch. And as it was mentioned earlier in this, we have a 3-day, our signature offering is a 3-day, 2-night intensive with both of us together. It's for couples or individuals. It's not a group experience. That means literally 3 days, 2 nights of the two of us with all of our attention on you and your personal stuff or your relationship stuff. It's a very, very, very deep dive. And so I just wanted to put that out there to anyone who's hearing this and is really like, oh my God, that touched something deeply. And I know that I've got these shadow parts that I'm really wanting to get free in. It's for people that have done a lot of work on themselves and yet want to go even further. And so if anybody is interested in that, if you go to our website and fill out an application under the page, The Light Dark Experience, which is the name of that 3-day intensive, we will review those applications and we can give you a free call with us to really begin exploring your dark side and exploring what that looks like for you and what you might be interested in calling in for yourself, and what those shame spots are that you're curious to see what kind of freedom and intimacy and power is on the other side of.
That's Raj, will you make that for me? Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely love that model, that personalized model. I do, it's not sometimes the two of us, but mostly me, but I work with couples here in my home. It's just so nice to have that intimacy, to go deep and over a couple of days. And I imagine 3 days and 2 nights, you can really go deep with a couple. So thanks for painting that picture. I think it's such a great model for people because they're not just doing an hour here and an hour there, but they're fully immersing themselves and really leaving, totally transformed in a way that, an hour a week just can't do. And the shift from doing it with a group to doing it just with you guys and getting that personalized attention is really rich. So I'm definitely going to be letting people know about that. And as you do get your new dates available, please let us know, and we'll let people know on our list as well. So for everyone who's listening or watching the replay, thank you so much for joining us. This is our last episode of the season, the season of peace, but we will be back on March 1st. We have lots of fun things in between then. But we'll be back March 1st for the season of passion. Yes, right after Valentine's Day, the season of passion. I had to remember, summertime is play. Right after Valentine's Day is passion. So we're going to be bringing on the passion, and we will hope we can support you in kicking it up a notch as well. You deserve a playful, peaceful, passionate relationship. And really, life is just too tough to do alone, and a crappy relationship is way worse than no relationship at all. And yet a wonderful relationship is so, so worth it. And with people like Leslie and Toni, you can not only have a wonderful relationship, you can have a relationship that gets better and hotter and sexier and more intimate and vulnerable and authentic year after year after year. Don't believe the cliches. It does not have to fade and get boring.
Have a great, great holiday, everybody. And thank you once again, Toni and Leslie, for joining us. And just can't wait to apply a lot of the tips.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Such
you.
a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you both so much. And thank you everybody who was watching. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Take care. Happy holidays.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everyone.
Bye.